Hello, everyone. This is I'll take off my headphones. This is the fourth video in the introductory series, and I think the last video in the introductory series. After this one, I'll probably go a bit more granular, type by type or information element by information element. My future videos should still be, try to be accessible, but this is the last of the very bird's eye view ones and sort of term establishing ones before zooming in. So this video is on intertype relationships, and this is sort of a core feature of Socionics from the beginning. The founder of Socionics, Aushra something, last name is hard for me to pronounce. She wrote this article as like the dual nature of man, and I think her own goal in having this particular take on the Jungian kind of information is to be like, what's the missing piece that everyone seeks after? This has led to some sort of, I think, cultural weirdness in the Socionics community, where people think about this, people having a dual as, sort of like this magic, true love, complete understanding thing, and maybe conflictor, the relation on the other side of the scale, being the opposite of that. You sort of hear people say in discussions like, like I know this person's my dual, or sometimes they don't even know their own type and they say that, or they'll say like, I'm IEI, and you're annoying me, so you're not a SLE, you're an LSE. So let's try to think about what goes on in these intertype relationships without falling into that kind of pattern of thought. So there's this sort of elaborate classification with these very descriptive names, sort of every type with every other type. There is some name of an intertype relationship that goes along with that. And I think they can be sort of this fascinating roadmap for some of the dynamics that happen when you interact with another person. It doesn't have to be romantic. It can be a friend, a coworker, a child, or someone on the internet. And you sort of see that there's these different dynamics that happen from the different elements being in different places. So I'll sort of go relationship by relationship until I reach all of them. So the first one is sort of maybe the most boring one. It's called identical. It's when both people are the same type. So not too much that needs to be explained from that, though I will do a video on that eventually. You have the same two elements in your ego block, so sort of the same kind of interests, but may also step on each other. You have the same two elements in your superego block, so the same sort of dreaded weaknesses, especially that vulnerable function. You have the same two elements in the super id block. You're looking for help or input on the same things from other people. So in that sense, probably won't be able to provide it that powerfully for the other person. And you have the same two elements in the id block, the same two things that are strong and unvalued. So you can sort of just handle them on your own and not bother the other people about that much. Just to give an example, let's say ESI and ESI. So both of them would have FI and SE in their ego block. So they would both have this very concrete relationship maintenance and integrity of personal preferences on their mind at all times. This could be good in that they're assured that the other person takes this stuff seriously. I actually think this is not an uncommon pairing in real life. But it could be bad in that both of them believe that they deserve control in that area and may not be okay with the other person's interpretation of where the relationship is at, of what people want, of what is good and bad. They have the same superego block. So that would be role TI and vulnerable NE. So neither of them are comfortable with these sorts of mental games, this, sort of what is this full truth that covers all of humanity. How do I deal with new concepts and untangle them? So on the one hand, they wouldn't bother each other about it, but on the other hand, um, it's if there is a situation where something like this needs to be understood and dissected, when sort of new ways of thinking about stuff is needed, or this sort of full mental clarity, neither of them are comfortable, and neither of them can really quite lean on the other for that. Uh, so in that sense, it may be stressful in a way that a relationship with someone with more fluency in these areas wouldn't be. These two ESIs have the same super id block. So they both have suggestive TE and mobilizing NI. So both of them are really sort of expecting leadership from someone else in this area of objective, evidence-based decision making. And both of them are looking for like assurance and reinforcement in their sort of abstract, holistic read of the landscape of what is worth doing and why, of sort of where things are headed. So they, on the one hand, they'll forgive each other for not having strength in these things, probably because they don't have strength in this area themselves. But there may be a sort of subconscious frustration because they really are expecting, especially the TE, for this to be something that they get help with from outside. And then there's the id block. They're ignoring FE and demonstrative SI. These are things they can mostly handle themselves, but don't think are a huge deal in terms of like creating a nice mood, in terms of making sure that you're comfortable and connected to the environment. They can each do this for themselves independently. They can each give the other one help if necessary, but they can also leave good enough alone. The only real risk is if they find the other person's help like a little bit insulting. So that's how that goes, and you can sort of break it down that way for the other 15 types. And I do plan to do this. And you sort of, but you don't, at some level, you don't need socionics to think through this one. You know that if two people are sort of similar to each other at their core, then their relationship will have strengths and weaknesses based on that. That they get each other, that they can collaborate, but that they sort of share this territory and don't really get what they need from the other person. That's the identical relationship. The next kind of relationship I want to discuss is sort of similar to identical. It's called mirror. And this is the type that has the same ego block as you in the opposite order. So the pairs that fit this are ILE and LII, ESE and SEI, SLE and LSI, EIE and IEI, SEE and ESI, LIE and ILI, LSE and SLI, IEE and EII. So for example, for the IEE and EII, the IEE, intuitive ethical extrovert, has a NE and FI in their ego block. The EII has FI and NE in their ego block. So it's the same two elements, but in the opposite order. And the same will be true for their other three blocks, that they'll have the same two elements there, but in the opposite order. So let's see how that one would work. So they both share NE and FI. So this gives this sort of similar core of what's important, that it's important to see who people are internally, to respect that, to sort of work on what's going on inside oneself emotionally, what's one's emotional core, where do their emotional reactions come from, what is their identity, as well as this more NE-oriented, discovering new things about oneself or others, seeing sort of opportunities for personal growth or personal enrichment, sort of seeing those opportunities for others as well. And there's sort of this nice element of collaboration with that IEE would pull it in this more expansive direction. Like, let's just try it. Like, let's see if this is the case with you, even if I haven't, don't have this sense of certainty about it. And the EII would push in this more conservative direction. Like, Let's make sure that we really have this core that we're acting out of. Let's really, sit patiently with someone else until we get what's going on with them. So it can be this nice, that IEE can develop this more reflective FI based side, and EII can develop this more expansive and open NE side. And there could be a little bit of conflict based on that too, that they are sharing this area, so they will be opinionated in this general area. They won't just take what the other person says as the truth, and that that there is the sense that maybe the emphasis is misplaced, like that the EII thinks that the FI stuff has to come first, might view the IEE stuff as inappropriately broad, or that they're just being self-indulgent or self-gratifying. Similarly, the IEE may view the EII as overly risk-averse or overly sensitive, taking things too heavily. So that's their ego block. Their super id block. For IEE, that would be their role SE vulnerable TI. For EII, that would be role TI vulnerable SE. And this could be a somewhat troubling area in that there could be resentment over EII is expected to do the lifting in having this orderly pattern of thought or orderly lifestyle, that they feel like any sort of consistent approach will fall apart if they don't do it themselves. And similarly for IEE, they maybe feel that this burden of action, of engagement, of really expending energy, that's all on them, that EII would just remain very passive and sort of too scared or too overthinking to act without them. So there could be a bit of this subconscious resentment that happens on the role function. On the other hand, they're not going to bother each other excessively about this stuff, which could be nice. So then there's the super id block, what they're looking for. The IEE would have suggestive SI and mobilizing TE, and the EII would have suggestive TE and mobilizing SI. And in this sense, there might be this light, I think, hi Scott, basically going to make the point that Scott made in the chat, which is that there is this little bit of mini duality thing going on, where the EII can appreciate the IEE's TE, that they really are thinking about the best or most effective way to do things, that they really have this sense of productivity that they can lean on. And it might be nice, too, that it's also this person who shares their ego block, that it's someone who can feed them this TE in like a sort of relatable way, in this more like humanistic, person-oriented, emotionally literate way. And there's something similar with the EII and their mobilizing SI, that the EII is someone who is more okay with details, at really paying attention to what's in their environment, about setting things up the right way, about being able to maintain things. And they may, encourage the IEE to be better at that stuff themselves, because they may be able to frame it, as part of this balanced and open lifestyle that they promote. On the other hand, if the demands sort of amp up too much, they will find that their partner isn't, doesn't have mastery of these things, and there could be some resentment that piles up around not feeling that they can fully trust the person in those areas. And then there's the id block. IEE has ignoring NI, demonstrative FE. EII has ignoring FE and demonstrative NI. And this is, similarly, they can handle this stuff for themselves. They won't necessarily bother the other person about it too much. I think there might be a slight element of, maybe the IEE uses too much FE or the EII uses too much NI. The demonstrative is more of an area of more intense interest, and it may lead to some level of disengagement as each partner prefers to use their leading function instead. All in all, though, these tend to be people who understand each other and can collaborate, unless they're stepping on each other's toes too much in core areas. Personally and anecdotally, I find this to be the most common relationship because it's people who get each other at some level. So that's mirror. Next, I guess I'll talk about duality, which is, again, a big concern of the founder of Socionics and something that gets talked a lot about in groups. So this is, often talked about as something that's fully complementary. I think it can work well. I think it can also work less well. Let's think about how this breaks down. So the pairs that are duals are ILE and SEI, ESE and LII, EIE and LSI, SLE and IEI, SEE and ILI, LIE and ESI, IEE and SLI, LSE and EII. I don't know. Let's think about the SLE and IEI. So there's sort of four. You can think about this along 4 axes. One, the sort of main one, is that each partner's leading function is the other one's suggestive function. So SLE's leading SE matches IEI's suggestive SE, and SLE's suggestive NI is sort of filled in by IEI's leading NI. So the way that this works, the suggestive function is usually something that is hard to do. I find that unlike the vulnerable function, where it's sort of like, I know how difficult this is, it's more like, oh yeah, I'm about to do that thing. And then they go to do it and it's like, I can't quite do this. Maybe, how would you do this? That it's this subconscious request to other people who are around. For SLE, that their issues are sort of with this this sort of grounding behind what they're doing. What is the point of it? What is the purpose? What is the vision? I want to talk about my manager at work. Sure, he'll be fine. I often find, like, I ask him, what the vision is or what the purpose of stuff is, and he talks about what other people's visions are, or he sort of starts to solicit it from me. That he's, very great at this action-based, more tactical stuff, but that this NI stuff is a bit of this hole waiting to be filled in, something that he's expecting to happen from what's around him. So that doesn't mean that the only people who can fill that in for him are IEIs or NI leads. I myself, whom NI ignoring, can fill this in sometimes, or, a group of people can fill it in, or an article on the internet can fill it in. But it's something that they really think is supposed to come from outside of them. And the same thing in this pair is true for the IEI and the relationship to SE, that they often have this great sense of, like, how the universe should arrange itself, which way everything is pointing to. But then when they sort of get up to actually do the thing, to really just, like, take a decisive action toward that, that is just sort of hard. And they're, for example, like, I work with someone I think is an IEI in, like, a church music team, and she's sort of will often, like, give some good direction about something and then sort of wait be like, and I sort of hear it like, is it okay for me to actually do this thing? Sort of look around and be like, maybe you do this thing. And that's sort of that SE suggestive for them to act. They sort of need this outside stimulus to act. You know, they don't necessarily need to be bossed around. That's sort of a stereotype. But this sense that, everyone is getting up and actually moving and actually doing and actually making an impact. So in this sense, there is this complementation between the two, that between this this action and doing and this sort of reflection and directing, and that if the two of them sort of fall back to what is most natural to them and figure out how to rely on the other for this thing that is not natural to them, that all the bases are covered. This isn't necessarily easy, though, because NI is really not a standard core part of SLE's personality, and if there's too much of it around, they can start getting annoyed. They can start getting antsy. They can start feeling like it's not real, that it's not backed up in evidence. So it does take a certain level of maturity, I think, for the SLE to understand that they need this outside input and to be able to accept it when it comes. And they should still find a venue to do more active stuff with active people, or the IEI will sort of let them down in this way. And similarly for the IEI, they are probably drawn to these more sensitive, nuanced, thoughtful people who also really have like a take on what's worth doing and why and what's going on behind everything. And that's not the SLE. The SLE may seem shallow or crude or unsophisticated. So they should still make sure that they have an outlet beyond just this person who's like a fairly unthinking vessel for what they provide. But at a close distance, it can be good because this way the IEI sort of doesn't have to share, and they can get their vision realized through someone who's interested in it without doing all of this pushback on their core areas of strength. So that's the leading and suggestive part of duality. Another part is creative and mobilizing. So the creative function, so that's TI for SLE and FE for IEI. This is something that's not as much a core, dominant, bossy part of their identity. It's more something that's a flexible tool that can adapt to the circumstances. Whereas the mobilizing function is something that's a little bit like trying too hard or a little bit blunt, or sometimes I think of it as this subconscious request for feedback, that it needs to be moved around a little bit until it works. So I think what you'll often see is the mobilizing one is the one that's actually used more. So the IEI will often make statements about what's true and false, will express strong logical opinions about the world, and the SLE will sort of adjust it, like possibly using their demonstrative TE also, like that actually works, that doesn't, no, that's stupid. Not always the most polite type. And meanwhile the SLE is using more FE, that they're really like expressing these strong currents of emotionality in a way that makes people stop and notice. But they're often like they're not quite appropriate. They're it's not quite the right emotion to be directed at that person at that time. And the IEI can sort of adjust their way out of it a lot of the time. And again, that may also have a tie-in to their demonstrative function, to that FI. And so that's sort of this dynamic where both of them are using both the FE and the TI. And there's this sense of adjustment, of learning, of give and take, unlike leading and suggestive, where there's more of this clear division of labor just by virtue of being these very different sorts of people. So then there's the other two sort of more hidden axes. There's the role and ignoring function. I think of this in the context of duality as things that are just not a big deal for that couple. So for SLE and IEI, that would be NE and SI. And it's just not a major theme either to, really spend time in this speculative, what might we be doing space, as well as, not thinking too much about issues of comfort or environmental situatedness or nitpicky detail. That axis in itself competes for space with SE and NI, which is the primary theme of that pair. But what is more important is this other axis. It's vulnerable and demonstrative, which would be TE and FI. And this is, in theory, and I think often in practice, it's something that's supposed to be protective. That SLE, really does understand these real world consequences, what they need to do to be effective, what's a better and worse decision based on evidence, how to really act effectively. And IEI, does understand more of the relational context, relational nuance. Who are these people that I'm dealing with, and how might they react to things? What might upset them? What is sacred to them? But they both try to divert them into their respective creative functions. So SLE can sort of order this TE stuff into being like, okay, we're going to do this and this way, and this is why, and that's less stressful for IEI to deal with than this very live TE stuff. And similarly, that IEI can redirect this FI emotional truth into FE dynamic situational emotions, that they can both tweak their own emotionality to sort of steer the SLE into what to do, as well as to just frame it as you made this person sad, rather than this person is offended, and then that provokes more reaction. Well, what was I supposed to do about that? How was I supposed to know that? But tweaking their emotionality, it's not necessarily oh, great, but it seems more tolerable. That said, these are still 4-dimensional functions. So they will really this will lead to real conflict, because IEI, bad at dealing with TE, SLE, bad at dealing with FI, compared to an identical or mirror relationship where these things are much more out of the way, this is more of a potential source of stress. So you could reframe it and be like, oh, it's also a source of growth. But I think you want to take the good and the bad with every pair, because we're talking about real people and real relationships, and we want to be responsible in how we describe that. So that's duality. Maybe more on that later. The last, I guess, of these same quadra relationships is usually called activity or activator or activity partner. So this is a little bit like duality, but with 2 extroverts or 2 introverts. The activity relationships are ILE and ESE, SEI and LII, SLE and EIE, IEI and LSI, LIE and SEE, ESI and ILI, LSE and IEE, and SLI and EII. So maybe let's use SEI and LII as our running example for this one. So how do these match up? So we know that SEI has leading SI, whereas LII has mobilizing SI. Similarly, LII has leading TI, and SEI has mobilizing TI. So that's one of the dynamics. Another one is creative and suggestive, creative NE to suggestive NE, and creative FE to suggestive FE. And then the two, sort of more hidden ones are role and demonstrative, and vulnerable and ignoring. So let's step through those. So I guess the lead mobilizing dynamic. That's sort of where that term activator or activation comes from. That LII very much is interested in issues of SI, and being around an SEI who's like all SI all the time, that's very much going to bring that out. They really are going to be more present in the moment. They really are going to pay more attention to their surroundings. And, unlike someone with SI suggestive who is sort of just like needs this blast to even stay above water, this is really going to stimulate LII to greater use, to greater competence. And the same thing is true for TI, that SEI really is interested in reasoning and principles and truth, and this very being around this very clear, solid logic that LIIs tend to have. It's going to bring that out in a big way. So this dynamic is usually a very good thing. On the other hand, there may occasionally be this sense of competing for space, that SEI really wants to do SI stuff their own way, and LII is sort of getting in their way with these sort of more halting, anxious attempts, and maybe just stop using that for a bit. And the same thing in reverse for the TI, that the LII may want sort of their own principles and their own logic accepted, and SEI is too much trying to work it all out themselves. And there's sort of the reverse of that, where LII almost gives SEI too much help in a way that can seem overly bossy, and the same with the SI. But all in all, this is activation. The next dynamic is creative and suggestive. So the LII has creative NE, SEI has suggestive NE. So SEI is very much seeking NE. They sort of need it subconsciously. And LII, they are good with NE. They use it in this nice, balanced, proportional, helpful way. And that's good for the SEI. It's useful input, and it's at some level it's nicer than what an NE lead would provide because they are flexible at it. On the other hand, it won't pull SEI out of their NE related rut because it's not this constant stream of alternate ways to think about things, alternate things they could be doing. They sort of leave some space for SEI to do it on their own. So, while it doesn't cause problems, it may not be quite enough of a shock to get the SEI out of their, sort of lack of alternative reconsideration. And the same for FE. That SEI's FE is a creative function. It's this nice, proportionate, situationally appropriate thing. It is something that the LII with their FE suggestive definitely appreciates, and can definitely take in. But on the other hand, the LII really has this very distant from the center, one-dimensional FE. They are not very emotionally vibrant. They find it hard to really stay engaged in stuff. So this sort of situational tweaking that an SEI does is not quite enough to make them come alive on a regular basis. They need this sort of more obnoxious, all-encompassing, constant blast of FE for that to happen. So creative, suggestive, good, not a source of conflict. Also not quite enough to save the person from themselves, which is probably okay. Let's talk about role and demonstrative. LII has FI role, SEI has FI demonstrative. So what this means is that LII can sort of handle FI stuff themselves. They can sort of dig into their own orientations toward things. They can sort of understand the relational grounding behind what's going on. SEI really understands this stuff very well and is willing to help in this area and often can get opinionated and push in this area. All in all, this is the right direction. SEI's help may be a little bit too much, that the LII may be a bit offended, being like, I really do understand myself in a way that you don't. I really do understand these people in a way that you don't. Your input is a little bit too much, that it's a bit infantilizing. The same can be true on the NI side. SEI has role NI. LII has demonstrative NI. LII has this really solid understanding of what's going on at a deeper level underneath the surface of what's likely to happen at the core of concepts. And they sort of instinctively assume that maybe other people don't get it. They may need a lot of help. So that, they give that help to the SEI. And sometimes it might be appreciated, sometimes it might be too much. And then the remaining one is vulnerable and ignoring. So the LII has vulnerable SE. The SEI has ignoring SE. And basically what this means is that the SEI will mostly leave the LII alone in terms of their fundamental weakness with with taking quick action, with really like going ahead and doing things. So this is similar to the creative suggestive piece. This is nice and can avoid some of the conflicts you would see in duality. On the other hand, it doesn't save the LII from themselves. The SEI is not going to drag them out of their inaction because the SEI is not that active themselves. They are more active, the ignoring function, but it's just not something that they're evaluating so much. And similarly for TE, that LII will not bother SEI much in matters of TE, but they will also not really save the SEI, will not really prevent them from suffering the consequences of their TE-related mistakes. So that's the activity or activation relationship. Next, let's talk about two of the more complicated ones, but sort of also more fun ones. That'll be supervision and benefit. Not perfect names, but there are also names where there's something to them. So let's talk about supervision. Supervision is a relationship where the leading function of one partner is the vulnerable function of the other. And then the creative function of that first partner is the leading function of the second. So what this sort of means in practice is that the two of them have a shared interest and a way to connect, but the way of being, the basic way of being of the first person, can sort of be harmful or painful to the second person if they're not very careful or very kind about how they express it. So this often leads to a sort of love-hate or admiration-annoyance dynamic. But like any of these relationships, can be good, it can be bad. It depends on other aspects of the people's temperament. The supervision pairs are ILE and LSI. ILE supervises LSI. LSI supervises SEE. SEE supervises EII. EII supervises ILE. So there's sort of 4 supervision rings. That's one of them. SEI supervises EIE. EIE supervises ILI. ILI supervises LSE. LSE supervises SEI. ESE supervises SLI. SLI supervises LIE. LIE supervises IEI. IEI supervises ESE. And then LII supervises IEE. IEE supervises ESI. ESI supervises SLE. SLE supervises LII. I know that's a lot to take in. So if you think about maybe, I don't know, maybe ESE and SLI. So you sort of see that ESE has this creative SI and SLI has the leading SI. So the two of them can connect over issues of SI. They're both really interested in, maintaining an environment, what's going on with their body, in good ways to do day-to-day stuff, in sort of how to create a comfortable equilibrium. This is an easy way for them to grow close together. However, the supervisor ESE has FE as their leading function, and the supervisee SLI has FE as their vulnerable function. So this means that SLI, very much is sort of allergic to this live emotionality, to this expressiveness, to this, atmosphere where everyone is sharing their emotions, is participating emotionally. And yet, that's the exact kind of atmosphere that ESE instinctively tries to create. Like that's their sort of default way of being, their default way of engaging with people. So, if this pair isn't careful, ESE can feel like their FE is being very rejected. And SLI can feel like there's something very intrusive going on that, that maybe ESE has it out for them personally by really making them emote, by making them be emotionally more vibrant. We can see beyond these two dynamics. We can see that there's other functions involved also. For example, ESE has role TE, whereas SLI has creative TE. So there's sort of this lighter supervision in reverse dynamic, where SLI is very interested in questions of objective facts and effectiveness and optimization. And the ESE sort of views that as not much fun, as not what they would be preferring to focus on. So that's a bit of power that the SLI has in reverse. We also see ESE has vulnerable NI, SLI has role NI. You can sort of think of this supervision as a whole as sort of like half of a mirror relationship. So the perceptions part, that works out like this more favorable relationship. In this case, that both of them can sort of let NI stuff well enough alone. You see that the ESE has suggestive TI and the SLI has demonstrative TI. So this can be good and it can also be bad. You sort of see that the ESE seeks this sort of clarity of thought, this consistency of principles, this order to their life. And here in the SLI is someone who very much can provide that, this very orderly, consistent, precise person. On the other hand, the SLI has this natural instinct to convert that into TE, that they really want any sort of routines or patterns or habits to be something that goes to use, that's aimed at real productivity and real efficiency. If they can sort of stop themselves from doing this, then they can be quite useful to the ESE. So that part can sort of go either way. NE, that's another sort of like a mirror pair. It's suggestive for SLI. It's mobilizing for ESE. So for both of them, it's this sort of seeking function. ESE can help out SLI with it a little, but not a ton. And then ESE has ignoring FI. SLI has mobilizing FI. So that's another potential point of contention. SLI is really looking for help in this area of understanding their own emotional self, their own preferences, of really keeping up this stability and solidity in their relationship. And they may sort of act out in that area, do it in a sort of way that's a bit off. ESE is not going to be that helpful because they view FI as sort of beside the point, that the point is more FE, like as long as the energy is good, let's not worry too much about that stuff. This may lead the SLI to feel sort of unseen in that area. And lastly, SE, demonstrative function for ESE, and ignoring function for SLI. Both of them can sort of handle it themselves, can help each other out if they need to, mostly leave each other alone. So in that, that's one of the sort of like a mirror pair stuff. Well, that's supervision relationships. That's one of the more interesting ones. Let's talk about benefactor relationships. That's I don't love that term, but it is one of the more interesting relationships, and we sort of have to break it down piece by piece to see how it works. So those pairs, again, there's 4 rings as with the supervision. ILE is the benefactor of EIE, or EIE benefits SEE, SEE benefits LSE, LSE benefits ILE, SEI benefits LSI, LSI benefits ILI, ILI benefits EII, EII benefits SEI, ESE benefits IEE, IEE benefits LIE, LIE benefits SLE, SLE benefits ESE, LII benefits SLI, SLI benefits ESI, ESI benefits IEI, IEI benefits LII. So you can see this one is always 2 introverts or 2 extroverts. Let's think about, I don't know, IEE and LIE. So what is the benefit? I think the reason this term exists is based on sort of the 2 main axes we think about with this relationship. So on the one hand, the IEE has creative FI and the LIE has suggestive FI. So that means that the LIE needs all the FI that IEE is giving them and more. On the other hand, the LIE is leading TE and the IEE is mobilizing TE. So I think the idea is that maybe the IEE doesn't need all the help in TE that LIE is providing them. So in that sense, it's sort of uneven. That's classic socionics. What I've actually found is that this tends to be a pretty good and pretty common relationship, and has some other dynamics that are sort of core to it. And you can sort of think of it as a half similar and half complementary relationship. So the half complementary is the side that I already mentioned, that FI and TE for this pair is something that they provide to each other, sort of in the way that activators would do. IEE and LSE would do the same. LIE and SEE would do the same. Those would be, the activator relationship with each of those types respectively. And the similar part is that they each have a pair of elements that's very strong and very weak. So both of these types, IEE and LIE, have four-dimensional NE. Their NE is this very good, very constant, very effortless thing. And conversely, they have one-dimensional SI. So neither of them has any fluency with FI. So you can sort of see that they have this NE over SI temperament, but this TE and FI complementation. So looking more element by element, let's look at it from the perspective of LIE. The TE, that's something that they can sort of collaborate on, with IEE as more of the follower. NI, not so much. IEE doesn't think NI is very important. LIE may try to get this pair like very aligned with each other, but IEE just sort of wants to continue to explore different areas. It's hard to sort of pin down to this unified direction. LIE has role FE. IEE has demonstrative FE. So IEE can sort of help LIE out, maybe a little bit too much with issues of, emotional vibrancy and expression. LIE has vulnerable SI. IEE has suggestive SI. So LIE is not going to help IEE with this at all. On the other hand, IEE is sort of going to subconsciously expect that LIE helps them with these issues. This could be a source of subconscious resentment. On the other hand, both of them are so bad at this that they may not really notice this going on, and they sort of accept their own weakness and just being able to maintain their life and themselves as just a fact of life. LIE has suggestive FI. IEE has creative FI. So you really see that IEE can help LIE out in these issues of self, of being relational, of understanding how to relate to people. On the other hand, it might not be quite enough to fully get through to the LIE, who is a TE lead, who is very much ends justify the means sort of person by default. They have LIE has mobilizing SE, and IEE has role SE. Not great. The LIE sort of looking to improve their capability in being this active, pushy person full of momentum. IEE prefers this more relaxed, exploratory NE way of being that may get the sense that the LIE's use of SE is kind of silly. And then LIE has ignoring TI. IEE has vulnerable TI. This is sort of like activation. TI will just be out of the way and not really a theme for this pair. On the other hand, LIE is not going to rescue IEE from, complete incoherence or complete disorganization, because they very much are oriented more toward TE. Like, let's see what this actually does. Let's not worry too much about whether, all our T's are crossed. And then LIE has demonstrative NE and IEE leading NE. We've sort of discussed this. They're both very fluent and effortless with NE. On the other hand, it's valued for IEE and not for LIE. So this sense that LIE is trying to convert it, to transform it, and IEE is not, could be this source of conflict, but more often than not, it'll be more collaborative. So that's benefactor. The other two relationships from like neighboring quadras, no, I guess there's not. No, there's four more. Okay, let's talk about the two more similar relationships from neighboring quadras. One is called kindred, and one is called lookalike or business. I don't love these names. This is what they're usually called. Kindred relationship, that's where you have the same leading function and a different creative function. So that would be ILE and IEE, SEI and SLI, ESE and EIE, LII and LSI, LIE and LSE, ESI and EII, SEE and SLE, and ILI and IEI. This is pretty simple. You know, it's like sort of like half an identity relationship and half I guess, conflictor relationship. If we look at, you know, ESI and EII, they have this shared leading FI, role TI, suggestive TE, ignoring FE. So this means that, you know, FI is this intense shared interest where they can also compete for space. It means that TI is something that they're both a bit anxious about and try to avoid. It means that TE is something they subconsciously expect from others and may accumulate dissatisfaction on. And it means that FE is not really a theme, but it's something that they can handle. But then the other axis is more reversed. ESI has creative SE, EII has vulnerable SE. The ESI's sort of level of activity, of pushiness, of really expecting this quick presence is going to mostly be stressful to the EII. Similarly, the EII's creative NE, this sense that people should open up more, should try to consider a wider variety of perspectives. That's going to be stressful to ESI. And then there's these other two, these mobilizing and demonstrative, that ESI will seek some feedback on NI. EII can give it, but they also find ESI's use of NI to be maybe a little bit over the top or too much. And the same thing for ESI and EII. EII is looking for feedback in matters of SI, and ESI is going to maybe view that as a bit over the top or misplaced. All right, I'm coming up on an hour mark, so I think I might split the rest of these into another video. So what remains is this lookalike business relationship, as well as mirage illusionary, semi-dual, quasi-identical, extinguishment, superego, and conflictor. And that'll give us the landscape of the rest of the intertype relations. But I think I'll end this video here. So I lied. There'll be one more introductory video. Thank you for watching. I guess some people are watching this one. Thank you, everyone.